Right now, on your Windows 11 computer, every single thing you copy is being saved somewhere you can't see. Your passwords, your bank account numbers, your private messages, even the embarrassing things you copied and pasted at 2 in the morning. None of it disappears the way you think it does. It's quietly in a hidden database on your machine, and in some cases, it gets uploaded straight to Microsoft servers without you ever clicking a single confirmation button. Like and subscribe before we go further, because what you're about to learn will change how you use your computer forever. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is not some fringe blog exaggerating a minor setting. This is a documented, repeatedly confirmed feature built directly into the operating system that more than a billion people use every single day. Microsoft calls it convenience. Security researchers call it a liability, and almost nobody outside the tech press knows it's even switched on. Let's start with the feature most people have never noticed, even though they use it constantly. Every time you press Control and C on a Windows 11 machine, the operating system doesn't just hold that copied text for one paste and then forget it. It logs it. It stores it in a running history that you can pull up anytime by pressing the Windows key, and the letter V. That shortcut opens a panel showing a list of nearly everything you've copied recently, sitting there waiting to be reused. On the surface, this sounds genuinely useful. You copy 5 different lines from a document, and instead of switching back and forth, you can paste any of them whenever you need. Writers love it. Office workers love it. It saves real time. But convenience like this almost always comes with a cost that isn't advertised on the label. That cost is where this gets uncomfortable. The clipboard history doesn't just stay on your machine in some encrypted vault. It is written to a database file sitting inside your own user profile folder, completely unencrypted. Anyone with administrator access to that machine, or anyone using basic forensic recovery tools, can open that file and read your clipboard history in plain text. There's a deeper technical reason this matters more than people assume. Most users picture their clipboard as something temporary, a kind of digital scratchpad that vanishes the instant they paste or copy something new. For decades, that assumption was actually true. Older versions of Windows held exactly one item in memory, and the second you copied something else, the old item was gone for good, erased from existence with no trace left behind. Windows 11 quietly broke that assumption. The moment clipboard history is switched on, that old scratchpad behavior disappears, replaced by a persistent log that keeps building in the background. You're no longer working with a temporary holding space. You're working with a running diary of nearly everything you've typed, copied, and reused, sitting in storage long after you assumed it was gone. Like and subscribe, because the next part is where things get genuinely alarming. Think about what passes through your clipboard in a single week. You copy a password from a manager to log into your bank. You copy a verification code sent to your phone. You copy your social security number into a tax form. You copy a private message to forward it to a friend. Every one of those fragments can sit in that unencrypted file, waiting for anyone who knows where to look. This isn't a hypothetical risk dreamed up by paranoid bloggers. Security researchers have pointed out that enterprise IT departments specifically disable clipboard history across their company computers for exactly this reason. If corporate security teams treat this feature as dangerous enough to switch off company-wide, that alone tells you something about how seriously you should be taking it on your personal machine. Now picture the life cycle of an ordinary laptop. You use it for a couple of years, then sell it, trade it in, or hand it down to a relative once you upgrade to something newer. Unless you specifically wiped that clipboard database file, whatever you copied during your entire time owning that machine could still be sitting there, waiting for the next owner or a repair technician to stumble across it. The same risk applies the moment a laptop goes missing. A stolen device doesn't just hand a thief your files and photos. It can hand them a readable log of passwords, banking details, and private conversations you copied and pasted over weeks or months, all sitting in one convenient, unencrypted location they don't even need special skills to access, no advanced hacking required at all. Now here's where it gets worse. Clipboard history in Windows 11 doesn't have to stay confined to one device. Microsoft built in an option called Clipboard Sync, which takes everything you copy and pushes it through Microsoft's cloud servers so it appears on every other Windows device signed into the same account. Your laptop, your desktop, your work PC, all sharing the exact same stream of copied data. Like and subscribe, because this next fact is the one most users have never been told directly. When that sync feature is switched on, your copied data does not simply teleport from one device to another. It physically travels to Microsoft's servers first, sits there temporarily, and then gets delivered to your other machines. That means a password you copied on your home laptop passes through a corporate server farm before it ever reaches your office desktop. You are, in effect, mailing your secrets through a stranger's post office and hoping nothing gets opened along the way. Microsoft insists this is opt-in, and technically it is, but here's the problem. Most users never consciously chose to turn it on. It gets enabled during a routine Windows setup flow, often bundled in alongside other account syncing options that sound harmless, like syncing your desktop wallpaper or your browser favorites. Nobody reads every toggle during setup. People click next, 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 and suddenly their clipboard is leaving the building. There's also a sharper risk hiding inside shared computers. Picture a family computer or a shared workstation in a small office where multiple people log into the same Windows account throughout the day. One person copies their banking login. Hours later, someone else opens the clipboard panel out of simple curiosity, and there it is, sitting in plain view, fully readable, fully reusable. It's worth pausing here to acknowledge that not every Windows user is equally exposed. Owners of older PCs without the specialized AI processing hardware required for recall simply can't run that particular feature at all, regardless of whether they want to. Clipboard history, on the other hand, runs on virtually every Windows 11 machine in existence, making it the far more universal concern of the two features covered in this video. There's another angle to this that rarely gets discussed outside cybersecurity circles. Malicious software designed to steal cryptocurrency has specifically targeted clipboard contents for years, swapping a copied wallet address with an attacker's address the instant before you paste it. A persistent clipboard history doesn't just store more of your data passively. It also gives this entire category of malware a wider window of opportunity, since stale entries can sit there far longer than the brief moment a single copy-paste action used to last. Think about how casually most people treat the copy and paste motion. It feels invisible, almost like blinking. You copy a wallet address, a license key, a confidential file path, and you assume the action disappears the instant you've used it. That assumption is exactly what makes this risk so easy to overlook. Because the feature works silently in the background regardless of whether you remember it exists, like and subscribe, because the next feature takes this entire conversation to a different level of intensity. Clipboard history is just one piece of a much larger pattern inside Windows 11, and the most extreme example of that pattern has a name: recall. Microsoft introduced Recall as an AI-powered feature that takes a screenshot of your entire screen every few seconds, all day, every day, and quietly stores those images in a searchable, local database. The pitch was simple: forget digging through browser history or old documents. Just type a phrase, and Recall finds the exact screenshot where you saw it. Microsoft initially framed this as a premium feature reserved for a new category of hardware it branded Copilot Plus PCs, machines equipped with dedicated chips fast enough to process AI workloads locally. That branding made Recall sound exclusive and cutting edge. It also conveniently distracted from the much simpler underlying description: a tool that takes a photograph of your screen on a constant loop and saves every single frame. Read that statement again slowly. A piece of built-in software was designed to photograph your screen every few seconds without you pressing a single button. Not once in a while. Not when you ask it to. Continuously, silently, automatically, for as long as the feature is running. When Microsoft first revealed this to the public, the backlash was immediate and brutal. Security analysts didn't hold back their language. One industry analyst from a major research firm bluntly compared recall to a built-in keylogger and screenshotter. The exact kind of tool malicious hackers spend years trying to secretly install on a victim's machine. Microsoft had simply built that capability directly into the operating system and given it a friendly name. Regulators in Europe moved almost as fast as the security community. A UK data protection authority reached out to Microsoft directly within days, demanding clarity on exactly how the feature handled personal information. Authorities don't typically react with that kind of urgency. Unless something about a product's design sets off serious alarm bells the moment it crosses their desk. The core legal problem regulators kept circling back to was consent. A screenshot taken every few seconds doesn't just capture the device owner's own activity. It just as easily captures a private message sent by a friend, a confidential file glimpsed over someone's shoulder, or a photo belonging to a person who never agreed to have their information screenshotted and stored at all. Like and subscribe, because what happened next proves the critics were right to be worried. Within days of the announcement, a researcher demonstrated that Recall's database could be accessed and pulled apart far more easily than Microsoft claimed. The screenshots weren't locked behind some impenetrable vault. They were sitting in a location that, under the right conditions, malware or a person with brief physical access to the machine could scrape and extract in bulk. Every snapshot, every private message, every banking session, all of it recoverable. The privacy implications stretch even further than security. Imagine every screen you've ever looked at being saved as a photograph somewhere on your hard drive. That includes private medical information you researched for a family member. That includes a difficult conversation with a partner conducted through a messaging app. That includes confidential work documents you weren't supposed to screenshot in the first place, simply because they happened to be visible on your monitor. A privacy advisor speaking to the BBC didn't mince words when this first broke, warning that the simple knowledge a screenshot might be taken at any moment could create a chilling effect on how people use their own devices. Think about what that means. People could start second-guessing what they look at on their own private computer, simply because an AI system might be quietly photographing it in the background. Like and subscribe, because the story doesn't end with the initial backlash. It gets worse from there. Facing intense criticism, Microsoft pulled Recall back from a full public rollout and limited it to a smaller group of test users inside its Windows Insider program. The company promised a complete security overhaul before bringing it back to everyone. Encryption was strengthened. Biometric authentication was added as a requirement. To even view the stored screenshots, the feature was switched from on by default to off by default, a meaningful concession after the initial uproar. The delay stretched on far longer than Microsoft originally planned. What was meant to be a quick fix turned into a year-long redesign process, with engineers rebuilding core parts of how screenshots were captured, encrypted, and stored. That length of delay alone tells you the original implementation wasn't a small oversight that could be patched in a weekend. It was a fundamental architecture problem that required tearing pieces of the system down and starting over. But promises of better security only matter if they actually hold up under pressure, and this is where the story takes its most damning turn. In the months after Microsoft's redesigned, supposedly fortified version of Recall returned, a cybersecurity researcher named Alexander Hagina built a tool specifically to test whether the new protections actually worked. Like and subscribe, because what he found should worry every single person who trusted Microsoft's fix. His tool, built to probe the rebuilt Recall system, successfully extracted sensitive screenshot data anyway. Not once, but on more than one occasion across different rounds of testing throughout the following year. Despite encryption claims and despite biometric login requirements, the underlying delivery mechanism that hands screenshot data to the user interface contained flaws that let his tool bypass the protections and pull stored images out regardless. Microsoft denied that a genuine flaw existed, but denial doesn't erase a working proof of concept. A security researcher had a tool in his own hands, capable of reaching into a feature Microsoft had spent over a year rebuilding specifically to prevent that exact outcome. The fact that it kept happening repeatedly across separate testing rounds tells you everything about how difficult this problem actually is to solve at a fundamental level. This wasn't a one-time embarrassment either. International incident tracking databases that log real-world AI safety failures formally recorded the recall vulnerability as a documented case of an AI system exposing user data through a security flaw. Having a feature's failure logged in that kind of formal record is not a minor footnote. It places recall in the same category as other publicly recognized AI incidents involving genuine, demonstrated harm to user privacy. This pattern matters because it shows something deeper than a single buggy feature. It shows the structural tension at the heart of building a photographic memory system directly into an operating system. The entire value of recall depends on storing a massive archive of everything you've ever done on your screen, but the entire risk of recall comes from that exact same archive existing in the first place. You cannot have the convenience without creating the exposure. They are the same feature, viewed from two different angles. Like and subscribe because institutions that manage real security risk for a living have already made their decision about this feature. Universities, including large research institutions, formally warned their own IT administrators that recall introduced what they described as substantial and unacceptable security, legal, and privacy challenges. These are organizations that handle research data, student records, and sensitive institutional information every single day. When an institution like that looks at a brand new Windows feature and tells its own staff to disable it across the board, that is not an overreaction. That is a professional risk assessment landing on the same conclusion ordinary users should be drawing for themselves. It's also worth remembering that early testing of recall surfaced an even more specific problem before the feature ever reached a wide audience during internal review. The system was caught capturing screenshots that included visible credit card numbers and social security numbers, displayed in plain text on screen at the moment the snapshot was taken. That single detail captures the entire controversy in one sentence. A feature built to remember everything you see will, by definition, remember the things you most desperately need it to forget. Now let's connect this back to the clipboard because the two features share the exact same underlying philosophy. Microsoft's broader strategy with Windows 11 has been to quietly expand how much of your activity gets captured, stored, and made searchable, all framed under the banner of helping you find things faster. Clipboard. History captures what you type and copy. Recall captures what you look at. Together, they form a far more complete picture of your digital life than most users realize exists on their own machine. There's a technical detail inside Recall that makes this connection even tighter. The feature doesn't just store raw images of your screen. It runs optical character recognition across every single screenshot, converting the visible text into searchable data the moment the snapshot is taken. That means any password, account number, or private message visible on screen gets automatically transcribed into plain readable text inside the very same database, sitting right alongside your clipboard history if both features happen to be active at once. Picture both systems running side by side on the same machine. Your clipboard history holds a readable log of everything you've copied. Your recall database holds a readable, searchable transcript of everything you've seen on screen. Together, they don't just double your exposure, they create overlapping records of the exact same sensitive information captured through two completely different channels at the same time. Like and subscribe because once you see these two features as one combined system instead of two separate settings, the next steps make a lot more sense. Like and subscribe because here is the uncomfortable truth connecting all of this together. None of these features require you to do anything unusual to trigger them. You don't have to visit a suspicious website. You don't have to download a sketchy file. You simply have to use your computer the normal way you always have, copying text, glancing at your screen, switching between apps. And the system quietly builds a record behind the scenes. The danger here isn't reckless behavior. The danger is ordinary behavior, captured by default settings most people never reviewed. So what can you actually do about this? The good news is that both of these features can be controlled, and the steps to do it are far simpler than most people expect. Let's start with Clipboard history, since it affects almost everyone running Windows 11, not just owners of specialized AI-focused hardware. Open your Settings app, then head into the System section and look for the entry labeled Clipboard. Inside that menu, you'll find a toggle for Clipboard history itself. Switching that off stops Windows from keeping a running log of everything you copy, meaning only your single most recent Clipboard item exists at any given time. The way clipboards worked for decades before this feature ever existed. Like and subscribe, because the next step matters just as much as the first one. In that same Clipboard settings menu, look for the separate toggle controlling sync across devices. Even if you want to keep Clipboard history active for your own convenience, turning off the sync option specifically stops your copied data from ever leaving your device and passing through Microsoft's servers. This single switch is the difference between a private convenience feature and a cloud-connected data stream you never explicitly agreed to. If you'd rather keep Clipboard history turned on but still want peace of mind, get into the habit of manually clearing it after handling anything sensitive. After copying a password, a verification code, or financial information, open the Clipboard panel with the Windows key and V and use the clear option to wipe everything stored. It takes seconds, and it closes the exact window of exposure that worries security professionals the most. A password manager can quietly remove a huge chunk of this risk on its own. Most modern password managers fill login fields directly without ever touching the clipboard at all, which means your most sensitive credentials never get logged in Clipboard history in the first place, if you're still manually copying and pasting passwords. From a Notes app or a spreadsheet, switching to a dedicated password manager closes one of the biggest exposure points covered in this entire video. Be careful with third-party Clipboard Manager apps as well, since some of them introduce their own separate risks. These tools often promise even more advanced clipboard history features than the built-in Windows option, but that usually means storing your copied data in yet another database, sometimes synced to yet another company's cloud servers you know even less about. Before installing one, ask yourself honestly whether the extra convenience is worth adding a second copy of your sensitive data into a system you don't fully control. Like and subscribe, because the next setting affects an entirely different category of device. Now let's address recall. If you're using a newer Copilot Plus PC, the kind specifically built with the processing hardware required to run recall, check your Settings app under the Privacy and Security section, then look for the recall. And Snapshot Sentry, confirm the feature is switched off, and if you ever enabled it previously, use the option inside that same menu to delete any snapshots already stored on your device. Like and subscribe, because most people skip this final detail, and it's actually the most important one. Turning a feature off in settings does not always erase what it already collected. Stored screenshots and clipboard logs can remain sitting on your hard drive even after you flip the toggle that stops new data from being added. Always look for a dedicated delete or clear history option inside these settings menus, and use it deliberately rather than assuming the off switch alone wipes your existing footprint clean. Beyond these two specific features, it's worth understanding the larger pattern playing out across modern operating systems. Windows 11 ships with privacy settings scattered across numerous menus, many defaulting toward data collection rather than restriction. Location services, advertising identifiers, diagnostic data sharing, and AI-powered analysis tools are all bundled into a system that assumes you want maximum functionality rather than maximum privacy, unless you go looking for the switches yourself. None of these settings are particularly hard to find once you know where to look, but Microsoft has never made a strong effort to walk users through them during setup. The entire onboarding experience is built around getting you into the desktop as quickly as possible, not around making sure you understand every data sharing decision. Happening along the way, diagnostic data collection alone covers far more ground than most people assume. Crash reports, app usage patterns, And device performance statistics flow back to Microsoft continuously, justified as necessary for improving the operating system over time. The justification might be reasonable on its own, but it adds yet another stream of information, leaving your device by default, layered on top of Clipboard sync and recall snapshots if either of those happens to be switched on as well. Advertising identifiers present a similar story. Windows 11 assigns your device a unique advertising ID specifically so apps can build a profile of your interests and serve targeted ads based on your behavior. Most users never realize this identifier exists, let alone that it can be reset or disabled inside the Privacy and Security Settings menu, sitting just a few clicks away from the same area where recall and diagnostic controls live. Like and subscribe, because seeing all of this laid out together changes how small each individual setting actually feels. This isn't unique to Microsoft. Every major technology company building AI-powered tools is wrestling with the same fundamental tension. More stored data means smarter, more helpful features, but more stored data also means a larger target for anyone trying to extract it, whether that's a hacker, a forensic investigator, or simply another person who shares your device. Apple has leaned harder into on-device-only processing for many of its AI features specifically to sidestep this exact controversy, choosing narrower functionality over the broader, riskier approach Microsoft has pursued with Recall. Like and subscribe, because understanding this trade-off changes how you should think about every new feature added to your device going forward. The lesson here isn't that you should throw your computer away or swear off modern technology entirely. The lesson is that convenience features ship turned on by default far more often than they should, and the only real protection is knowing exactly what's running on your machine and deliberately deciding for yourself whether the trade-off is worth it. Most people never get that choice, simply because they never knew there was a choice to make in the first place. Consider how differently you'd behave if you had been told on day one of using your new computer that everything you copy gets logged in a readable file and that your screen might be photographed every few seconds in the background. You'd think twice before pasting a password into a random form. You'd think twice before glancing at sensitive medical results on screen. The features didn't change your behavior because you never knew they existed in the first place. That gap between what's actually happening on your machine and what you believe is happening is exactly where privacy erodes the fastest. It doesn't happen through some dramatic hack or a single catastrophic breach. It happens quietly, one default setting at a time, accumulated across years of operating system updates nobody fully reads before clicking accept. Compare this to how people generally think about their phones. Most users at least vaguely know their phone tracks location data and app usage because that conversation has played out in public for over a decade now. Desktop computers somehow escaped that same level of scrutiny for years, treated as private personal spaces immune from the same surveillance economy reshaping mobile devices. Windows 11 quietly closes that gap, applying the same data-hungry instincts to your laptop and desktop that already reshaped how phones operate. The irony is that the people most likely to need this kind of protection are often the least likely to have time to research it themselves. This shift matters even more for anyone working with confidential information as part of their job. Lawyers handling client documents, healthcare workers reviewing patient records, journalists communicating with sources, and small business owners managing financial records are all using the same default Windows settings as someone simply browsing social media for entertainment. None of these professions were specifically warned that a screenshot tool or a synced clipboard might be quietly running in the background of their work machine. Like and subscribe, because the responsibility for catching this almost always falls on the individual user, not the company that built the feature. Think about how this plays out practically for a small business. An employee copies a client's banking details to process a payment, unaware that Clipboard Sync is quietly pushing that string of numbers through Microsoft servers to every other device signed into their account. Multiply that single moment across an entire office of employees, repeated daily, and you start to see how quickly a default setting nobody chose can turn into a serious organizational liability that nobody budgeted for and nobody saw coming. Like and subscribe, because the final point here is the one worth remembering long after this video ends. Software companies have learned that framing surveillance as convenience makes people far less likely to push back. Nobody objects to a faster way to find an old screenshot. Nobody objects to easier copy and paste across devices. But strip away the friendly branding, and what you're left with is a system quietly logging your most private digital actions by default, handing that responsibility to corporate servers and unencrypted local files instead of keeping it firmly in your own hands. This is precisely why naming a feature carefully matters so much to the companies building it. Calling something recall sounds warm and helpful, like a friendly digital memory assistant. Calling it a continuous automated screenshot logger with searchable text extraction sounds exactly like what security researchers warned about in the first place. The branding isn't an accident, it's a deliberate choice designed to make surveillance sound like a gift. That's exactly why a feature like Clipboard Sync or Recall doesn't need to be malicious to be dangerous. It simply needs to exist, sitting there collecting data nobody asked it to collect, waiting for the one moment a hacker, a forensic tool, or a curious stranger with access to your machine decides to take a closer look. By then, the data has already been sitting there for weeks, sometimes months, completely unaware it was ever at risk. Like and subscribe, because the next few minutes you spend checking your own settings will matter more than almost anything else covered in this video. Go check your own settings app right now while this is still fresh in your mind. Look at the Clipboard section under System, and look at the Privacy and Security section for Recall if you're running a Copilot Plus machine. See exactly what's switched on and decide for yourself, with full information this time, whether the convenience is genuinely worth the exposure. Don't stop at just your own machine either. If you manage a shared family computer, a small office network, or even just help an older relative with their technology, walk them through these same settings as well. Most people who would benefit most from this information are exactly the people least likely to ever stumble across it on their own. The screen in front of you remembers more than you think. The only real question left is whether you're finally going to control what it remembers, or let the defaults keep deciding for you. Like and subscribe before you go, and share this with anyone you know still running Windows 11 without ever checking these settings for themselves.